Before I start, I want to say that Lebanese architecture is marvelous. We're going to discuss these buildings zooming in one step at a time, and you're going to watch this video to the end because it's going to be an interesting ride. But even before that, I have a very important message. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Antoine here. It's very hard to say that Beirut has got destroyed this previous month again. Thoughts and prayers to all the victims, and making the Lebanese architecture even more prone from completely disappearing. A country's traditional architecture is its identity. I'm not saying that all buildings should be built that way because I will be the first one to oppose it for various reasons. I'm saying that there should be a percentage, and the already existing ones should be strengthened and preserved, not ignored and later destroyed. So please share this video because most of the stuff happening around us and most of the economical, political and other factors are contributing to the erasement of this identity.
The buildings were characterized by several beautiful elements, like this series of arcades. Other than that amazing view it gives for the facade of the building, it creates a fantastic ambience for homeowners, along with a feel of comfort. They provide a good shade against rain and sunlight. It is also sometimes included in the interior of the house, where the material used are sometimes stone or wood, and later newer decorative materials arrived. But outdoors, stone is most frequent. This gallery of arches is known in Arabic by the name riwaq. And then comes another element, Iwan. That is a large arch which provides an opening to the building, followed by a hall leading to the entrance. When used indoors, it creates that oriental energy and adds to the house a better feel, where a smooth arc-shaped form is made without sharp, abrupt corners. And outdoors, almost all of them are closed lately in Lebanon, whether with glass and metal or wooden doors, adding a room to the interior space. And then, for me, if I ever hear Beiruti architecture, this is where my mind goes to the three arches and a corbelled marble veranda with a beautiful metallic balustrades and some plants. A nice render with a simple color. Before continuing this video, I would like to say that now you can include these architectural Lebanese heritage frames in your profile picture on Facebook. Normally directed towards a great view to the sea or to a panoramic mountain view, it arrived in Lebanon in the 90s, was perceived as a symbol of wealth, and richer people incorporated the room associated with the three arches with fascinating interior decorations. It is one of the biggest symbols of Lebanese architecture and is said to be converted from Venetian architecture with influence from Ottoman architecture. Sometimes you witness those series of arcades or iwan located in the center of houses plans that have an outdoor field in the middle called in Arabic dar, that most of the times has a circular pond or fountain. And we can see beautiful mixes between the elements like because why not? They go well together. Of course, not all economic classes could have the aforementioned elements. A very frequent design was the basic house. It was mostly a rectangular shaped building with stone walls and earthen roof before concrete started being used in Lebanon. The basic house had many times multiple units, whether horizontally or vertically. Like, for example, my grandfather lived in a house like this with his family, and then whenever one child would get bigger, they would add a unit, and then they would divide the rooms between the children. The architectural influence on Lebanon was mostly from Ottomans and Europeans, but of course, there were some influence from others also. Now it's time to zoom in and discuss the elements of the building. Before starting, I would like to state that from a structural engineering standpoint, since most of the elements used were strong mostly in compression, they had to form funicular shapes. This explains their need to include the arching forms. Let's start with vaults. Mainly, two types can be found, barrel and cross vaults. The barrel vault has the following geometry. Just look at this small clip that I posted on my social media and imagine the cozy feeling and warmness it would give to your rooms. Structurally speaking, the load is distributed by one-way action. And then there's the cross vault. When used in residential buildings, it appears in the ground floor. It was also used in public buildings, especially in big religious buildings where they also used tall columns. I believe it gives a feeling of grandeur, and structurally, two-way action is happening in here. While constructing, they needed wooden formwork. It was labor intensive but provides a structurally sound body. And then we have the domes that were observed in this country mostly in the roofs of religious buildings. Then about the walls, we have dominant use of stone walls, mainly limestone, and we could identify the presence of sandstone and basalt. As of mortar, there was dominant use of lime, but some walls had no mortar at all, so the position and shape of each stone had even more effect on how the wall would last. Some walls had little to no stone cutting, but others were crafted in all their faces. The equipment used are chisels and hammers, and for the look, they had tools like something called in Arabic shahuta and others. Also in walls we have earthen walls. The earthen walls frequently heard about in Lebanon were in the form of bricks, but they weren't even fired. After they molded them, they would let them sit under the sun for some time. The last category of walls I would like to talk about: walls formed from wooden frames. When used, they were the load-bearing structure and they were mostly hidden with earth and other materials. Wood was also used for structural purposes in Lebanon in sloping roofs bearing the clay tiles, though it wasn't necessarily just a wooden structure starting from the foundation wall, because they also used to install wooden trusses on stone walls. Now it's time to discuss the roofs. We have flat and sloping roofs. About the flat roofs, it consists of wooden planks and then clayey soil overlaying it. They used to leave near it a big cylindrical stone called in Arabic mahdale that they have to roll over the clay after raining. That constant maintenance that exhausted people led this type of roof to start vanishing ever since alternatives arrived. And about sloping roofs, it started in Lebanon when France started to export clay tiles known in French by tuiles de Marseille. They used to be interlocked together and fixed to a wooden frame. The moment they arrived, they had a big influence since Lebanese people can now finally have a low maintenance roofing with a great and pleasing view, which later became very famous and became embedded in the identity of the country. Those tiles remain to this second highly demanded and used here. It's very rare to look at a picture of a big Lebanese village where you don't see a reasonable number of them. And now about the coats applied to the walls. We have renders and we have washes. In the renders, firstly we have lime render, which was lime mixed with sand and broken stones or tiles. It was mainly applied in the interior since my ancestors liked to show off raw materials in the exterior. To apply it, they used a float, trowel, and sponge. Secondly, earthen renders, where they mixed soil with sand, cow dung, lime sometimes, and here's the interesting part: they also would add sometimes straw, animal hair, or plants. They could make very beautiful decorative renders with clay, whilst just using their hands and trowels most of the time. Renders had a protective role, but sometimes, as stated, it also had a decorative role also. And now washes. When used, washes cover renderings, and almost same materials that are used for renderings are used in washes. The prominent one was lime washing, which they did over the render coat with brush and sponges. Natural color was kept, white, and otherwise they mixed in some mineral pigments. If we take a look now at what is still there from this work, we see how much water affected them. If you want to know more about how water affects building materials, check my previous video, The Truth About Mold. Our next step in zooming in is discussing floors. Floors were formed by stone slabs, rammed earth or clay tiles, lime cement tiles, and later they incorporated some beautiful mosaic tiles. And then, stairs were most of the time cantilevering from the stone wall as you can see in the picture. Lastly, the ornamented corbels were sometimes used structurally and other times only architectural. They would use steel beams later as support or just a cantilever concrete slab.
Now, in the end, I can't go over all what I want to talk about in this fascinating topic, so if you might be interested in more, let me know in the comment section. Whether you're Lebanese or not, by sharing this video, you might contribute to the awakening of the public concern about protection of such gems, by first letting people know the delicateness and uniqueness this heritage creates to the streets it inhabits. In the end, do not forget to subscribe for more content.